Well, it happened. Nebraska needs a special teams coordinator. Not a surprise, but we've got things to talk about. Let's do it next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend. If you're listening to us from Kansas City, you're buried under several feet of snow or something like that at the moment. We missed that a bit. Lincoln got what, an inch and a half or 2 inches or something like that.
Nothing where I live.
Yeah. Omaha, not much at all. So he's Mitch Sherman. I'm Connor Happer. Welcome to the Locked On Nebraska podcast. It was a busy weekend. We have a lot to catch up on, but the lead story was the inevitable, I suppose, the thing that people were waiting for over the last several weeks since the season ended, or I guess it's only been a week plus since the season ended. Ed Foley will not be Nebraska's special teams coordinator next year. And so, Mitch, right. I want to defer to you. I want to ask you first. Like, I guess there's still some questions when you say that statement out loud. Okay, Ed Foley's not going to be the special teams coordinator, even before you get to who's going to be the special teams coordinator next. I guess, what is Ed Foley's role in the program? Is there one? Like, there's still a lot of questions out there.
I don't know that there is one, but that's not been made official. The school confirmed on Saturday night that he won't be the special teams coordinator, and that's as far as anyone was willing to go in the moment. Will he have a reduced role? I'm not going to say that I expect that, but time will tell. And we've not had an official statement or heard anything from Matt Rhule, the head coach who had to make this decision, which I'm sure was a hard one for him. Not necessarily hard in knowing that he had to do something with special teams. He seemed very much to be recognizing that in the aftermath of the Pinstripe Bowl when he said that a complete and total overhaul was coming for special teams. But to go and make that move with a coach who's been by his side for 10 of the last 12 years and someone who was a trusted confidant, and Ed Foley in a different time presided over some great special teams units, if you want to go back to Temple. So I don't know that Matt Rhule fully believes that Ed Foley has just forgotten how to coach special teams. That's not necessarily what happened here. It just wasn't working. And much like what happened with the offensive coordinator situation back in early November, when it's not working and it's this high pressure of a situation, you just have to do it. So he's not going to be there. And Nebraska, yes, is on the lookout, on the hunt for a special teams coordinator.
Yeah, and it reaches a lot of it reaches a lot of places. Like, I saw some conversation from over the last couple of days here from local high school coaches, people in small towns in Nebraska or Omaha or Lincoln, saying Foley had a little bit of a different approach, like a necessary approach to actually really digging in and caring about the places that he goes to. He's Foley was famous for his summer tours around the state over the last couple of years. So it sounds like that'll be missed by a lot of people in the state for sure. So there is that piece of it too.
I think he did it different than anybody since the Osborne era, since Dan Young and others. And Dan Young, famously was a former Omaha high school coach. Frank Solich was a former Lincoln high school coach. And the two of them, along with others on that staff, like they would find a way to hit every high school in the state, if not every year, certainly every other year. And while Ed Foley didn't quite do that, he was more diligent about getting into high schools and meeting people. And it wasn't just that he wanted to come in and put his sticker on or his magnet on, which he literally did at a lot of high schools. He wanted him to meet people and hear about the dynamics that existed within a metro area. If he was in Omaha, like, okay, why is this school in this district here, and why do you play these guys? Why is this your rival? I mean, I had conversations with Ed about that kind of stuff. I talked to high school coaches who had conversations. They sat on the couch. He brought them donuts. Like, he did the things that just like the old way of recruiting. And as this page is turning with Ed Foley leaving that role, I think the page is turning in a larger way, in that Nebraska's not going to be able to invest. Whoever the coach is at Nebraska never again, sadly, is going to be able to invest that way that we saw from Ed Foley, like the old school way of doing it with Nebraska high schools, because the walk-on program will never be what it once was with 105-man rosters. And even the scholarship offers that go out to players in the state of Nebraska are going to be reduced in numbers, because you don't have 150 spots. You can't take 30 players a year. You have to be more wide-ranging and focus on the transfer portal to make it work in college football today. So instead of having 8, 9, 10-man classes with high school talent, it's going to be more like 3 or 4 in a given year. And the amount of time that Nebraska and assistant coaches at Nebraska are able to invest in going from high school to high school to high school in the state is going to be reduced, which is really a sad day for Nebraska football and for the state of Nebraska.
Totally. We've seen a shift just as far as how Nebraska approaches roster, management. And you have to, like, it doesn't make sense for Nebraska to really, really dig that deep.
They can still have relationships, and you're still going to see a coach going around the state. I'm not saying that's all going to be gone. Like, you do have unlimited staffs now, but you can have only 10 on the road at a time. So you have to find that balance to be able to.
There's just other areas there's different pools to recruit players out of. And like you said, the foremost thing in that conversation is the fact that Nebraska is not going to take an extra 25, 30, whatever guys a year from the state, from around the state, to have us in the walk-on program. It's just, it's going to be very few and far between now.
You have a Christian Jones, Tyson Terry, Chase Lofton in these last couple of classes. Nothing changes as far as Nebraska's devotion to recruiting those kinds of players. But I'm not going to single players out and say, well, this guy's worse than others. But there are examples in this class, in the next class, in the last class, in all recent classes at Nebraska, where that guy wouldn't have gotten an offer from Nebraska. And if he doesn't get an offer, then Nebraska's not going to invest a lot of time and energy in recruiting him, because there are going to be very few walk-ons in the program.
Okay. So as far as the special teams part of this is concerned, I guess I'll turn that one over to you, Mitch, as well. Where do we expect this to head? Is there a time frame? I guess what's the next move here as far as special teams are concerned at Nebraska?
Well, I think you want to do it somewhat quickly, Connor, because we are now moving into this phase of self-evaluation, self-scout, beginning to plan for what you're going to do in the spring and what the offseason looks like. Now, you want to get the right coordinator, but you also don't want to lose too much time. And the football season is over. We're getting to the NFL playoffs. If you're going to bring somebody out of the NFL, that pool of coaches who are actually still busy is going to be getting smaller and smaller and smaller starting right now. We're talking on Sunday night. This is the last day of the NFL season, and tomorrow's Monday, the day that this podcast comes out, is Black Monday in the NFL. So coaches are going to be available, and you've already seen coaches getting fired already right as the regular season games ended. So you don't need to wait that long when you identify the coach that you want. There's 4 teams still left playing in college, 3 games left in college football. So I think it's going to happen fast. The coaches convention is this week in Charlotte, and sometimes that's an opportunity for head coaches to go and cast a wide net. I will say this: the Nebraska special teams coordinator job, if Matt Rhule were to go to the convention where there are thousands of young coaches, aspiring coaches, and he were to advertise that through the right channels, it would be, if not the most coveted position that's available among jobs that are open and being discussed at the convention, certainly within the top 1%. Like if you had an offensive coordinator at an SEC or a Big Ten school, that might be higher, but you're talking about a $500,000 and up position likely. Yeah. And you're talking about being a coordinator at a Big Ten school. So there should be no shortage of candidates who want this job. And you've got to be able to find someone who's good at it and good for it. And it doesn't have to be a former Nebraska player or a former Nebraska coach.
Let me add this in here. Because I think I'm just approaching that job from a little bit of a different, standpoint. I think it's a hard job. Sure. I think coaches know that it's a hard job, and they've seen what Nebraska's attempted to do. It's on special teams, that spanned multiple coaching staffs now. For that reason, I was sort of thinking about how attractive of an obviously it's a great opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a tough job. It's a hard job. It's a job that comes with a lot more scrutiny, coaching special teams than a lot of other places around the country because of what Nebraska hasn't been for a long time.
Okay. But there's if you're average at special teams right now at Nebraska, you don't have to be Notre Dame. If you're average at special teams at Nebraska right now, you're going to be hailed as working wonders.
That's true.
I don't know what's harder about it than coaching special teams anywhere else at a major conference. It's easier to coach special teams at Nebraska than it is to coach special teams at Northern Illinois because you have now the same size roster and better players. Like players 85 through 105 on your roster are going to be better at a Big Ten school than they are at a MAC school. They just are. And you're going to be able to execute special teams better. If you've got the right schemes and the right attitude and the right mindset and the head coach wants to do it and wants to be good at it and is committed to it, then it shouldn't be coaching special teams is tough, but it shouldn't be any more difficult than it is at another school that is like-minded with Nebraska.
Yeah, maybe it's not functionally harder, but I think it comes with more. It comes with more heat. It comes with more notoriety. I don't know how many places around the country who like the lay person knows who's in charge of the special teams.
They don't, and the only reason they have it in Nebraska is because it's been such a struggle. And right. I think if the special teams were to just kind of even out and become something that Nebraska could rely on and wasn't necessarily winning them a lot of games or losing them a lot of games, then it would get back to that in Lincoln.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's take a break. We have plenty more to cover, including an important basketball game, a transfer portal enterer, and a transfer portal. Some coming, some going. The transfer portal works both ways. We'll be back after this. But first, I'd like to tell you about the FanDuel Sportsbook. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are near, and they are better with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Once again, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets, same-game parlays, so much more. Anytime touchdown scores. You can go on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now, and you could look at line. As of the time of recording this, we don't have the entire NFL playoff field set, but there are some games that are. So you can check those out on the FanDuel Sportsbook right now. You could even check out odds on who is going to win it all. So place that first $5 bet, and you will be rewarded healthily. Get started, $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the National Football League.
Okay, welcome back. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. Elsewhere, since we last got together, Connor, Nebraska basketball beat UCLA 66-58 on Saturday at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Nice win for the Huskers. Stay with us until the end of the show, and we will get in depth on what's going on with the now 12-2 Nebraska men's basketball team. Thomas Fidone, tight end for Nebraska of the past 4 seasons, the past 2 as a featured pass catcher in the Nebraska offense. He announced, is this the right way to describe it? He signaled that he will be and he will be leaving the Nebraska football program with one season of eligibility left. Thomas, he did this on Threads. The information has been presented to me.
He threaded it. I don't know. I heard that this had happened, and then I was like, okay, he announced it in a social media post. But did he announce it in a social media post? He threaded a peace sign emoji with a few videos of himself and pictures of himself from his time at Nebraska, and that was it. There was no other context. So I think we could. I mean, sounds like he's in the transfer portal. He's definitely in the transfer portal, but
or maybe he's going to make a run at the NFL. It's possible that he won't go in the portal, and the portal is a little more
Nebraska, right?
Yeah, the portal is a little more black and white because you'll find out. Like there are media members who have access, the keys to the portal, so to speak, and if his name pops up in there, it's going to come out, and that hasn't yet happened. So he is on the way out from Nebraska in one way or another, perhaps to look around and shop himself to another program, but also it could just be to, after 4 years to be done playing college football. And he's been through 2 knee surgeries, and it might be best for him to just see if he can make it and see if he can be that kind of player who came out of Council Bluffs Lewis Central viewed as one of the top athletes in the country at his position. I mean, he had a productive Nebraska career, but didn't score a touchdown this year, and I think we saw his playing time get cut a bit after the offensive coaching changes occurred in November, and it seemed like something was a little bit off. Had a good Pinstripe Bowl. By all accounts, had a good month of practice leading up to the Pinstripe Bowl, but it seems like there was something was disjointed a bit as it would have needed to be to pave the way for him to come back as a 5th-year senior.
Well, he's a bit of a lightning rod. I mean, going all the way back to the way, when he was recruited, there's just been a lot of, and then the injuries and how a person handles that, back to back, basically. It's just, I think it's been hard for him. He's been, in a lot of different places in his college career.
I don't know if it's like through any doing of his own. I don't really think. I mean, there have been a couple times where he was outspoken on stuff, and he's a good quote, good soundbite, but he didn't. And okay, occasionally, like he would take the Nebraska words out of his social media bio, whatever. They're all free agents after every season, but he never went in the portal. And prior to this whatever he's doing now. So I mean, he's been loyal and he's been passionate about how much he's loved Nebraska through his whole life. He gave this program 4 years. Like whatever he's gonna do, like good luck to him, and I definitely wish him the best. Like it's rare to get 4 years from a player in today's world of college football. So definitely hope that Thomas Fidone lands on his feet and does end up in the NFL, whether it's next year or after another year in college.
But how about the guy that Nebraska grabbed out of the transfer portal, Marques Watson-Trent, the defensive player of the year in the Sun Belt Conference a year ago, out of Georgia Southern. He's racking up triple-digit tackles. That's a pretty good, productive pickup in the transfer portal at linebacker for Nebraska.
Yeah, he's played at Memorial Stadium.
Tough night for the team in red, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Scott Frost's last game at Memorial Stadium. And really, it was the Georgia Southern offense that inflicted the pain that night. That Saturday night in Lincoln. Nebraska went up and down the field, just not quite with the same efficiency as Georgia Southern. And that spelled the end for Frost and basically spelled the end for Eric Chenander, too, as defensive coordinator. Well, Marques Watson-Trent, he has 1 year of eligibility left. He's an inside linebacker. I watched some highlight footage of him this weekend, and instinctive defender, always around the ball. Like you're not going to look at him and go, he's not like Javen Wright or really even he's not like MJ Sherman. He's more like traditionally built as a linebacker, like 6 feet tall, 220. And he just gets after the ball, like good speed, good instincts, lots of clips with him, nearly intercepting passes or delivering big hits against Wisconsin. I saw some Badgers footage in there. So I just think he has an it factor in the way that he plays defense, and you add him to Deshaun McCullough coming out of the portal at the linebacker spot from Oklahoma, and Nebraska's now beefed up its linebacker group to go as older players in mixing with Vincent Shavers and Willis McGahee the fourth, and then Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt, the two young bucks who were coming in. So that's a position I think that's better now than it was a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, you can't teach that. What you said about what pops out with him on tape, like you just can't teach some of that stuff. He's just always he's always around the ball. People always do this when Nebraska gets any linebacker of any sort, but like you're like, who's another guy that was just always around the ball and had incredible instincts? He's a really good linebacker at Nebraska, and
is he the next Levante David?
People always do that. I'm not doing that. I didn't even say his name, Mitch. Thank you. But I'm not saying that, but that was a quality that he had. He was super instinctual. And still has to this day playing in the NFL. So love that. I mean, and the production is like fantastic. You get a guy that is had that many tackles in his career. It's pretty good stuff.
You can just mark it down now. Connor's calling for like a 12-year NFL career for Marques Watson-Trent after his one season at Nebraska. So
definitely
Levante David, the next Levante David. Here we go. So that's 13 portal pickups for Nebraska in this portal season here, and things revved back up a bit last week with visits. I noticed over the weekend as the New Year's Day bowl games. So there's a 5-day window after teams play their last game, if it's a bowl game, that go beyond the initial December 28th deadline for portal entries. So if you played on January 1, then 1 + 5 is 6. Monday here, as this show airs, is January 6th. So this is about it. Like in the next day or two, you're going to see more names trickle in. What I noticed over the weekend were several offensive tackles who went into the portal from big programs. Alabama sent a portal, a tackle into the portal. These are things that are going to come onto Nebraska's radar because that's the glaring omission to this point. Maybe a running back and then multiple offensive linemen, specifically tackles, and perhaps a center, unless they're going to change somebody's position or they think Sam Sledge is ready to take over as a starter at center.
Yeah, I like the fact that Nebraska's not looking for much at they can be selective, but at the same time, you still definitely need those guys. At the same time, these tackles who enter the transfer portal now,
high dollar.
Yeah, the going rate is going to be pretty exponential. So that's what Nebraska has to do at this point.
And frankly, that may be an advantage for Nebraska.
Maybe
that may limit that does limit the number of schools that are going to be in contention for those players. And unless Nebraska finds itself in a place where Oregon or Ohio State or Texas or maybe Michigan is in a bidding war with them, then they're probably going to be the team that has leverage in those conversations. So expect to see something happen there in fairly short order with Nebraska getting back in conversations with an offensive tackle or two, or just offensive linemen in general. That's to watch this week. All right, when we come back, we promised it. We are going to talk some Nebraska basketball. Big win for the Huskers over the UCLA Bruins on Saturday as the winter storm bared down on Lincoln. The winter storm that never truly arrived. We'll talk about it next. All right, I want to tell you a moment here about Game Time. If you want to attend the new 12-team college football playoff in person, or what's left of it, the 2 semifinal games or the championship game coming up, if you're fortunate enough to be able to travel to one of those games, or maybe you live in one of the cities where a game is being contested this week or on January 20th, think about Game Time. Remember the excitement of past playoff games? If you can't wait to make new memories with this updated format, check out Game Time. I want you to check out a new feature on Game Time called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to big events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through for thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time to find tickets here for a basketball game in the state of Nebraska. It was a great experience. It's a breeze. You got the super deal. You got all kinds of different features inside the app. You can see views from your seat. And there's the one thing that's the best is that it has all-in pricing. Gives you the lowest price guarantee. What you want to do, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here on a Monday. The other big news story of the weekend is Nebraska basketball. Fresh off of both Mitch and I predicting that they're going to win an NCAA tournament this year. An NCAA tournament game. Rather, yes, not a whole NCAA tournament. We did not predict that. Do not put that on the internet that we predicted that. So the natural thing to do would have been to lay a gigantic egg on Saturday. That they did not. They took down UCLA 66-58, which that's a top 15 team who was, missing a couple players out of their rotation. But Nebraska has now won 20 straight games at home. They've won 12 straight in the Big Ten at home. Mick Cronin, of course, was not impressed by the environment. Which is, in a weird way, is sort of like a compliment, I think, to Nebraska as a basketball team. So, yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the UCLA coach who reminds people when he spoke at his press conference on Saturday that he has coached in the Final Four. He goes, I don't remember what team that was. I think it was the one that we took to the Final Four. Like, he's been at PBA before as the coach at Cincinnati, and it was a similar kind of rock fight game a few years ago that he ended up on the losing end of, and I imagine this is probably his response anytime UCLA goes on the road and runs into a raucous crowd. It was kind of raucous inside PBA on Saturday. Connor, you were there. I mean, it wasn't like, I've seen it much more electric. No students, so you lost a little bit of that, but it got loud. It got loud when Nebraska was on a 15-0 run in the first half and then promptly turned around and gave up a 15-0 run. And then it got loud in the second half when Bryce Williams was on the bench, Nebraska's top offensive threat, and it became like the Sam Hoiberg and Andrew Morgan show for 64 seconds, and they got a double-digit lead and kind of just were able to coast it into the garage from there.
Yeah, loved it. So yeah, as far as the crowd thing is concerned, he just talked about their team's inability to make enough shots, and that was a part of Nebraska's plan. And UCLA teams just generally are teams that are coached by Mick Cronin. They have a tough time putting the ball in the basket, and so Nebraska did a better job than them on the offensive side, and they proved they were up to the challenge on defense. I took it as a compliment to Nebraska as a basketball team, who is now, I think people are starting to kind of notice around the conference, and maybe when you were listening to this podcast on Monday, Nebraska's a ranked team. Maybe they're close to it, or they're receiving a bunch of votes because they have a very good player, like a all conference type of player, who's their leading scorer, in Bryce Williams, who didn't have a great game on Saturday, and they're apparently unbeatable at home. So that's a really good recipe.
I have a prediction on that. I don't think Nebraska will be a ranked team. And this is a dangerous thing to say because this podcast is going to come out on Monday, and so does the poll. But in looking at where Nebraska was at last week in the poll, it received one vote. It was the last team in the receiving votes category. So that's going to jump clearly. But I don't think that the home win against UCLA, if it had been a road win, but that the home win is going to be enough. Now, if Nebraska goes and takes care of business against Iowa and Purdue, or even if it were to lose one of those games, I think it might get more to lose and then win one of those games. It would get more consideration to get into the poll next week. But, it doesn't matter. Like right now, Nebraska is sitting 33rd in the NET, 34th in KenPom. So they're consistent basically with where Nebraska would be at if the tournament were seeded today. And that puts you at like a 7 seed. So 7 or an 8 seed. So Nebraska was an 8 seed last year. Plenty of opportunities to move up for this team has 9 games left in the regular season against teams that are ranked higher than it in the NET. So Nebraska's 10th in the Big Ten in the NET, and it's 34th nationally. So you're going to get strength of schedule boosts all throughout, starting with that game, even the game at Iowa. Like Iowa just gave up 182 points or something like that the other night against Wisconsin in Madison,
Iowa.
But this game's in Iowa City, and the Hawkeyes will come out and shoot 60% like they do at home, and then going to Purdue on Sunday is going to be a huge challenge for Nebraska. So a challenge, but also huge opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. There's a lot in the Big Ten that has to work itself out here. I can't.
You don't think the league's as good as it looks?
No, I don't. I don't think it's as good as it looks from a metric standpoint right now. I definitely don't think that. Because it looks really good from a metric standpoint right now. I think Illinois is probably your front runner. Like the team that if the Big Ten said, "Hey, we can have one possible Final Four team or whatever it might be. Like let's put our best foot forward. Here's Illinois." Maybe that's the answer to the question right now.
Yeah, nobody's jumping out in that category like Purdue a year ago.
Right. Purdue is probably a back end of the top 25 team. Same thing with UCLA. Oregon got slapped around by Illinois at home. Maryland had put together a pretty good resume so far, but they went on the road to the West Coast and lost to Washington. So it's just, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it's going to look like quite yet. A bunch of good teams, and they've definitely done favors for themselves in non-conference play. But I mean, like you said though, that's all Nebraska has to worry about. They take care of business themselves. They did enough in the non-con to get them to the point where they don't feel like they have to make all of these games up. There's going to be a lot of teams who are sitting around 10-10, 11-9, 12-8, who are going to be, NCAA tournament bid type of teams. And so Nebraska, with a halfway decent next several weeks is going to put themselves with a perfect opportunity to be right there.
I'm kind of in awe a little bit of what Fred Hoiberg did with this roster, because when I watched at the beginning of the year, I was unimpressed. I just thought this is just a collection of guys. And it looks to me like, well, they lost a ton from last season. It was a good team. Like they had the pieces and great chemistry. And, he was scrambling. This is what I thought. He was scrambling and just, trying to find players who had resumes and had been at schools that, seemingly would recruit good players like UCLA or Washington or Wisconsin, but, Rutgers, but that hadn't panned out. And I'm like, how is this all going to work? How is it going to come together? It didn't seem like he had the makings of a team that was going to be in this position in early January. And even in late December, in mid-December to win a mediocre to below average tournament in Hawaii. He's put this together, and you've got Gary and Williams, and don't exclude Sam Hoiberg from that group too, because he's just tough as nails and always
on Sam Hoiberg and Andrew Morgan's names.
Right. And Morgan is a new guy, right? He just fits right in there, like he's perfectly suited. He's like the big Sam Hoiberg, but they've gelled and they've come together, and the pieces look like they fit. It looks like there was a strategy here in the guys that he went after in the portal, and he wasn't just grabbing pieces that were available. So, all praise to Fred for kind of doing this again. It's not over. I mean, they're not in the tournament. Things could go off the rails, but the way that his seasons have gone the past 4 years, they get better as the year goes on. Yep. And they, at some point, they start a run, and they're tough to beat at that point. And every year from 21 to 22 to 23 and now 24, that run of playing good basketball has started a little bit earlier. And this year you got it to happen even in the month of December, which is impressive.
Yeah. And as far as the game is concerned, Nebraska won a game where, Bryce Williams got to the free throw line a lot, which is a credit to him and how dangerous he is, but he wasn't, he wasn't his normal self, missed a couple, open looks. And Connor Essegian, Connor Essegian had great looks, many great looks, and missed them all. But he was really, important, doing his job.
He was plus 20 in the
Wow.
plus minus
Crazy.
with I believe 2 points and over from the field for
As
a guy who's supposed to be there to shoot.
specialist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So they get it done in a bunch of different ways. Like post defense is really good too with Mia and Morgan and Berkay didn't have a great game in his revenge game offensively, but defensively he stood in there as well. So it was a really good team win for Nebraska. Fred Hoiberg mentioned after the game that they had this kind of win last year against Purdue and then went right back on the road against Iowa and got stomped out. So that's the challenge for Nebraska this time around.
Good motivational words for the Huskers that I'm sure that if they didn't hear it in the locker room, I think they did hear it in the locker room after the game Saturday, and they'll be hearing it again at practice on Monday. That Iowa game Tuesday night in Iowa City Carver Hawkeye Arena. So look forward to that. Something to keep our eyes on this week. Of course, we'll be watching the transfer portal. We'll be watching the special teams coordinator situation for Matt Rhule. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Nebraska. Thanks for making us your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig puts the Big Ten first in all of his college football playoff conversations, semifinals up this week. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.